Hey everybody, Matt from 90th percentile.ca here. For access to more study notes, practice questions, mock exams, and end of chapter question videos, visit 90th percentile.ca and sign up for your free trial today. Link below in the description. Here we're talking about measures of leverage. Really quickly at the beginning of the module, they discuss some, additional risks and give some definitions. Key ones being business risk, which are a risk inherent in a business or in an industry. So like, an isolated risk for the most part. Sales risk, which is simply the risk that their sales, either on a volume basis or price basis, don't meet up with their expectations. And then the most important one here is operating risk, which are risk associated with the operating cost structure and specifically some fixed operating costs inherent in a business's cost structure. And then from here, we go to different measures of leverage. So one being operating leverage, which, like I said, is related to fixed operating costs in a company's cost structure. So it might be something like, rent or even admin costs sometimes. But the easiest one to think of would be like rent. And then moving down, we also have financial leverage, which is leverage associated with financing your business with debt and having fixed financing costs, as opposed to financing your business with equity. And then from here, we go to total leverage, which is a combination of both operating leverage and financial leverage. And total leverage at the very bottom measures the percentage change in net income. So percentage change net income over the percentage change in sales. So the more leveraged your company is, the higher your percentage change in net income is going to be for a given percentage change in unit sales. But that also comes at more risk, right? Because if you don't generate the sales needed, then, well, you have a bunch of fixed operating costs that you have to somehow cover. And then finally, we'll also be given some information and be asked to calculate break-even sales for a company given, its unit contribution or profit per unit and its fixed cost structure. So with that, let's jump into the questions. Based on the information in exhibit, the question says exhibit 17 is actually 2. There's a typo in the question, so we're worried about this exhibit here, where we have number of units produced and sold, sale price per unit, variable cost per unit, fixed operating cost, and fixed financing expense. So based on this information, the degree of operating leverage of the company at 1,000,000 unit sales is closest to which one of these? So the degree of operating leverage measures the percent change in operating income divided by the percent change in units sold. So it incorporates variable and fixed costs into the formula. So if you actually, this same formula, if you're worried about um, quantity and the price per unit and variable cost per unit, the formula ends up being the quantity times the price minus variable cost over quantity times price minus variable cost. So it's the same thing. On the bottom, we're subtracting fixed costs as well. So from this information, we can sub in, we have what we need here. So I'm going to bring this over here. Degree of operating leverage is 1,000,000 because we're using 1,000,000 units, 1,000,000 unit sales times price of 108 minus the variable cost of 72. And then we'll take this whole thing and just copy it down here in the bottom. But then on the denominator, once again, we got to subtract our fixed cost, which is the 22.5 million. And if we run out this formula, we get an answer of 2.67. So our answer is B. And now we're worried about the same exhibit, but we got to calculate the degree of financial leverage. So the degree of financial leverage, a little bit different. It's kind of like a bit below the income statement. Or a bit below the degree of operating leverage on the income statement. That's kind of how I think about it. Whereas, degree of operating leverage, we're worried about the percentage change in operating income for percentage change of units sold. Here, for degree of financial leverage, it's the percentage change in net income, so below operating income, over the percent change in operating income. And once again, when we're given quantities and fixed costs and price per quantity, cost per quantity, then the formula is similar once again to the degree of operating leverage, but there's a couple more steps. So quantity times price minus variable cost. So it's, a unit contribution here is how you can think of this as well. Minus fixed cost. And then on the bottom, copy everything up top. So quantity times price minus variable minus fixed. And then minus C, which is your financing expense. So from here, we can bring everything over. We have all the info we need. And what we can do is enter in a million again for the quantity, price 108 minus 72 cost, minus fixed cost of 22,500,000. And then on the bottom, it's going to be this whole thing again. Million times 108 minus 72 minus 22,500. And then minus the 9 million. So you can notice before I calculate this, you can notice up top that this here is actually your operating income, right? Because you have your number of units you sold times the price. This would be revenue, and then times the unit cost. That would be your cost of goods sold. And then here's your fixed cost. So it's like a full P&L almost. Anyway, I run this out and I get an answer of 3. And our answer is C, 3. Based on the information in Exhibit 16 and 18, once again, I don't know, they're just making it hard on us here. It's actually this exhibit and this exhibit, so exhibit 3 and 1. So Q Phones, we're worried about a different company now. Q Phones expected percentage change in operating income for 2010 is closest to what? So we have down here, we have Q Phone, we have their 2019 sales, standard deviation not relevant for this question. And then we have their 2010 expected sales growth rate. So this is what we're looking for, right? We're worried about 2010 operating income. And we've got to calculate the percentage increase in their operating income. So sales are going to grow 15%. And then from this exhibit, we can see that they have a 1.4 times operating leverage. So they're growing their sales, their unit sales at 15%, but they have 1.4 times leverage. Primarily due to the fixed cost and that in the formula that we just calculated 2 questions ago for degree of operating leverage. So the operating income will actually increase by 15% times 1.4, which is 21%. So you can see how leverage helps companies magnify their returns, assuming everything's going well, and of course they're generating sales. But having a higher fixed cost base will help out, magnifying your operating income and your equity returns when you're able to actually capitalize on that leverage. So answer here is B. Going back to company 4G, we're asked to calculate their break-even quantity of unit sales. So to break even, they're going to have to cover what? Their fixed cost base. So their fixed operating costs and their fixed financing expense. So they're going to have to cover the 22,500,000 plus the 9 million. And how many units are they going to have to sell? Well, we have to look at their profit per unit because like the profit, their sale price minus their variable cost per unit is what they're actually bringing back into the company. So from there, they can use that to eventually break even. So the break even, we'll put BE here, is, like I said, the fixed cost divided by the sale price per unit minus the variable cost per unit. And if I run this out, you get a answer of 875,000 units, which is C. You could also, they could also ask, what's the break-even revenue? And then here at this point, you could just multiply this unit by the number of units by the sale price, assuming the sale price and variable costs remain the same. But just one more step that you could take if the question asks. All right, here we have another question or statement from the question. I kind of just summarize the info. The question in the book is unnecessarily long, but basically what's going on is kind of wrapping up our analysis on these two companies. And one analyst, there's two analysts involved, and one analyst asks the other analyst to um, tell them how the two companies will fare relative to each other in terms of net income if their unit sales increase by 10% above their 2009 unit sales levels. So we're asked about the percentage change in net income for a percentage change in unit sales, which is the degree of total leverage. So this takes it one step further than even the degree of financial leverage, and it actually combines degree of operating leverage and financial leverage. And like I said, it measures the percentage change in net income for percentage change in sales. And there's a couple ways we can calculate this. One is to multiply the degree of operating leverage by the degree of financial leverage. And the other is to, use this formula if we're given quantity and price and variable cost per quantity if we have it. Quick side note, like if you multiplied out the previous formulas that we saw for degree of operating leverage and financial leverage, it would summarize into this or simplify into this. So coming back to the question, in response to Cho's question regarding an increase in unit sales above 2009 unit sales levels, it is most likely that 4G's net income will increase at a slower rate, same rate, or faster rate as Qphone. So we have two companies, and basically what we're asked is who has the higher degree of total leverage. So for Qphone, it's actually pretty easy. We have degree of operating leverage and financial leverage here, so we can just use this formula and multiply them out. So I'll keep this over here. And we got 1.40 operating leverage times 1.15 financial leverage, and that brings us to 1.61 degree of total leverage. So now we can find 4Gs, but we're only given this info, so we're going to have to actually use this formula down here. And what we can do is just sub everything in. I'll bring it down here. We have space. So kind of similar to what we've done previously, a million quantity times the 108 price minus the 72 variable cost. Bring the same thing on the bottom. And then the fixed cost of the 22.5. And the financing costs are 9 million. So if we run this calculation out, we get a degree of total leverage of 8. So this is a lot bigger than the 1.61 that we see over here, right? So coming back to the question, 4G's degree of total leverage, which is 8, will increase at a faster rate than Qphone's. And basically the interpretation of this is that a 10% increase in unit sales will result in an 80% increase in net income. Whereas here, a 10% increase in unit sales will result in a 16.1% increase in net income. So 4G has a lot more operating and financial leverage combined. And due to that, as it sells more quantities, its net income will increase by a larger percentage. If two companies have identical unit sales volume and operating risk, they are most likely to have identical sales risk. Well, sales risk is simply the risk that either price or quantity of sales will be different than expected. So we're saying, they have identical unit sales volume, so I would cross that one out. Identical business risk, I mean, they could, but we don't know enough about the companies here, so we're just going to scratch that one out as well. And for C, since they would have the same sensitivity of operating earnings to the changes in the number of units produced and sold. So this is going to be your answer. And what we're talking about here, so operating risk is exactly what we just went over. It's related to the degree of operating leverage in a company. So if they have identical unit sales and leverage, then their earnings are going to be similarly sensitive to the quantity of goods sold. Okay, So last one here, we have two companies that operate in the same line of business and have the same degree of operating leverage. So that's important. The basic company and the Grund Legend company. So the basic company, blah blah blah. Okay, basic company and the Grund Legend company have respectively no debt and 50% debt in their capital structure. So these names aren't easy here. Let's write it down. So the basic company and then the call it the G company. So no debt, and then this is 50% debt, and the degree of operating leverage is the same. So what did we ask here? Which of the following statements is most accurate? Compared to the basic company, the G company has lower sensitivity of net income to changes in unit sales. No, it's going to have higher sensitivity because they have financial leverage because they actually have debt versus the basic company that doesn't. So once again, if you have degree of total leverage equals DOL times DFL. Here, the G company actually has this. So like it's greater than zero. So in this case, well, greater than one, actually not greater than zero, greater than one. Um, so in this case, DTL is going to be greater than the basic company, and net income will be more sensitive to the change in unit sales because we have this inherent fixed financing cost. And then coming to B, they will both have the same sensitivity of operating income to changes in unit sales. Yeah, they do. So this is the answer. They have the same operating leverage, right? It's actually made the answers here kind of easy, but we can look at C as well. They have the same sensitivity of net income. No, they don't. Because just like I said, G company has financial leverage while basic company doesn't.